On September 24, 2010, 39-year-old Todd Hofflander set out into one of the most rugged wilderness areas in America, Idaho's Seven Devils Wilderness. He wasn't alone. His friend Jeff accompanied him, and Todd brought along his loyal black lab, Ruby. The plan was simple: scout the area before deer season, camp for the weekend, hike between Sheep Creek Basin and McGaffey Basin, then head home. It should have been routine. It should have been uneventful. But by the time the week was over, Todd would vanish without a trace, and what followed would spiral into a mystery that took nearly 10 years to partially unravel. The two men camped, explored, and covered miles of steep backcountry. On the morning of September 27th, they were above McGaffey Cow Camp when Todd began complaining about knee pain from all the hiking. The terrain in this region is brutal, sharp elevation changes, thick brush, rocky ledges. So they made a decision. They would split up. Todd and Ruby would take the easier trail down toward the Snake River and McGaffey Cabin. Jeff would continue toward Sheep Creek, then drop down to the river. The plan was straightforward. Todd would wait at the cabin. Jeff would secure a boat and return to pick him up. Jeff followed the ridges north, eventually descending into Sheep Creek and reaching its junction with the Snake River. He flagged down a passing jet boat and got a ride to Pittsburgh Landing. There he met his father, Steve. Together, they launched Steve's jet boat and headed downriver toward McGaffey Cabin. They arrived later that afternoon. Todd wasn't there. No sign of him. No sign of Ruby. Jeff and Steve hiked roughly 3 miles up the trail from the cabin searching for him until darkness forced them back. They spent the night at the cabin, likely expecting Todd to appear at any moment. But he never did. The next morning, September 28th, they searched the shoreline between McGaffey Cabin and Sheep Creek by boat, scanning every drainage that emptied into the Snake River. By noon, with no results, they returned to Riggins and contacted the sheriff's office. A full-scale search and rescue operation began that very afternoon. Helicopters scouted the creeks and drainages from the air. Horse and mule teams were deployed from Windy Saddle at first light the following day. The U.S. Air Force even flew over the area using FLIR, forward-looking infrared technology, scanning for heat signatures. The landscape they were searching was unforgiving. Elevations ranged from 1,275 feet at the Snake River to over 7,600 feet at Windy Saddle. Some cliffs dropped nearly 1,800 feet straight down to the river. Thick canopy and brush covered lower elevations. Steep, exposed rock dominated the heights. Despite moderate temperatures, nights in the 50s, days in the mid-80s, the terrain itself posed constant danger. And yet, there was no sign of Todd Hofflander. No tracks. No gear. No dog. Nothing. On September 29th, organized ground teams began searching from Windy Saddle toward McGaffey Basin. Bernard Creek, Sheep Creek, and surrounding drainages were scanned again from the air. That afternoon, a dog team arrived with scent articles from Todd. They searched late into the night, using handheld thermal imaging devices. Meanwhile, Jeff and his father continued searching the river by boat. Still nothing. Days passed. Searchers combed steep slopes, dense brush, and narrow ravines. Multiple dog teams rotated in and out. Some were trained to detect living scent. Others were trained to detect human remains. None located Todd. Then, on October 6th, deputies interviewed a man named Tom Lindsay. How he became involved remains unclear, but he claimed that dowsing rods indicated Todd was near Bernard Creek. Specifically, he said that if you looked up Bernard Creek from the Snake River, Todd would be in the first draw on the right. He even claimed Todd was alive. Authorities did not appear to take this seriously. 2 days later, another strange development. The sheriff's office received a report that someone had found a skinned dog carcass floating in the Snake River the previous Saturday. The caller had photographs. It was unclear whether the dog was Ruby. Then, on October 9th, Jeff was interviewed at the Riggins Sheriff's Office prior to a polygraph examination. Deputies wanted to solidify the timeline. Jeff had photographs from the trip that confirmed Todd was alive in the days leading up to his disappearance. But during the polygraph, something shifted. The results reportedly indicated deception. Jeff was confronted. He insisted he was telling the truth. He suggested the machine must be wrong. He also revealed new information. Todd had been carrying a custom .44 Magnum revolver in a shoulder holster, a firearm that once belonged to his deceased father, a former California Highway Patrol officer. Jeff maintained that Todd had the revolver when they separated. He denied killing Todd. Denied covering up a death. Denied any wrongdoing. During questioning, Jeff's father abruptly entered the room and demanded his son leave. The interview ended. On October 13th, Deputies interviewed Todd's wife, Julie. She described tension in Todd's relationship with Jeff and Steve. She said they sometimes excluded him from trips, later calling to describe the adventures he wasn't part of. She claimed Jeff occasionally made her uncomfortable and treated dogs like tools, even beating his own. These statements painted a troubling picture, though none directly explained Todd's disappearance. Then, on October 15th, hikers stopped for lunch near mile marker 15 along Seven Devils Road. A black lab emerged from the hills, pacing, whining, growling. The hikers knew about the missing man and his dog. They tried calling the names Ruby and Todd. The dog reacted. They contacted authorities and drove the dog into Riggins. Deputies examined her. She looked healthy. Shiny coat. No visible injuries. No sign of starvation. But something was missing. Her collar. Her blue dog pack. Julie arrived with her children. When they called Ruby's name, the dog ran straight to them. Ruby was alive. But Todd was still gone. Search teams immediately returned Ruby to the area where she had been found, hoping she might lead them to Todd. She did not. Despite days of renewed searching, no clues emerged. On October 19th, deputies met with Julie again to discuss future search plans. She requested they speak to a psychic detective from California, whom she had paid $500. The psychic claimed Todd had deep inner anger and owed a great debt. She alleged Jeff had accidentally shot and killed Todd while hunting and buried him near Indian Trail Ridge. Searchers checked that area. Nothing. Over 18 days, nearly every accessible area near Todd's last known location was searched. At times, 7 dog teams worked simultaneously. Helicopters flew overhead. Planes scanned below. Hunters volunteered their help. Despite exhaustive efforts, no trace of Todd was found. On October 21st, with worsening weather and no leads, the search was officially terminated. For nearly 10 years there were no updates. Then, on April 27, 2020, a hunter exploring Bernard Creek discovered what appeared to be human remains alongside backpacking gear and a camera. He brought the camera to the Idaho County Sheriff's Office. Photos on the SD card showed Todd. Deputies traveled by boat to the location. The remains were found roughly 200 feet off the trail and across Bernard Creek from where Todd had supposedly been walking. Thick brush surrounded the site, a place difficult to see from the air. Only a partial skeleton was recovered. Fragments of skull, ribs, scapula, and part of a humerus. The pack and items matched Todd's gear. Julie confirmed they were his. DNA analysis confirmed the remains were Todd Hofflander. But 2 critical items were missing: his boots and his revolver. Both items are extremely unlikely to have completely decayed in 10 years. The holster was present. The gun was not. No clear cause of death could be determined. The discovery only deepened the mystery. Why was Todd 200 feet off the trail and across Bernard Creek? If his knee was hurting, did he attempt to camp near water? If he was alive when the search began, why didn't he return to the trail? Why didn't he hear helicopters, dogs, searchers calling his name? The canopy in that area was dense enough to obscure visibility from above. While FLIR technology might detect heat from a living person, it would not detect someone already deceased. Search maps showed Bernard Creek had been covered in sections, but not precisely where Todd was ultimately found. Then there is the matter of the dowsing rods. The man who claimed Todd was in the first draw to the right when looking up Bernard Creek from the Snake River. That draw lies remarkably close to where the remains were discovered, near the boundary of section PB38. Coincidence? What? Something else? The psychic hired by Julie predicted burial at Indian Trail Ridge, far from the actual location. Jeff's failed polygraph continues to raise suspicion for some. Others question the reliability of polygraph tests altogether. His assistance during the search complicates the narrative. If foul play occurred, it would require explanation for how Todd's remains ended up across the creek in dense brush, partially concealed by terrain. There were no signs of animal predation on the clothing. The gear was in relatively good condition after 10 years. The boots and revolver remain unaccounted for. Did Todd suffer an accident? Did he cross the creek and fall? Did worsening knee pain immobilize him in a location difficult to see and smell? Did he attempt to take a shortcut? Or was there an encounter, accidental or intentional, that has never been revealed? No official cause of death has been publicly confirmed. Undetermined remains the most likely classification. For Todd's family, the discovery in 2020 likely provided some measure of closure. But closure is not the same as answers. This case leaves us with unsettling questions. A man separates from his friend for an easier hike. A massive search fails to locate him just hundreds of feet from a trail. His dog survives and returns healthy. A firearm vanishes. A polygraph indicates deception. A dowser's vague prediction aligns uncannily with reality. In the end, the wilderness keeps its secrets. And the disappearance of Todd Hofflander remains in many ways a mystery that time has not solved.